Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's special event, Cottage Food and Value-Added Practices. This is our fourth virtual training hosted by the Florida Organic Growers and Consumers as part of the Florida Local Food Project. I'm Kathy Anderson, the Florida Organic Growers Event Planner and the Florida Local Food Project Event Coordinator.
And I'm Lana Shahabuddin, Assistant Programs Manager and Florida Local Food Project Coordinator. And we're really thrilled to have you all join us today for this special Lunch and Learn virtual training session focused on Florida's cottage food law and practices.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, everyone. So the Florida Local Food Project is the main initiative behind this training today, and is a 3-year USDA initiative designed to increase access to local food by connecting local food actors together, such as growers, chefs, and entrepreneurs, and strengthening current relationships in the local food system. We are currently in the 3rd year of this project now. We just entered that 3rd year and have launched an online network of over 120 people, and have put together various successful events across the state, both in person and virtually. Please click the link in the chat to join our statewide project if you haven't already. We also want to thank our advisory committee that are on the call today for their continued support. We have various organizations that are supporting us through this initiative, including the University of Florida, Feeding Florida, and the Florida Food Policy Council. Before we kick off the training, I want to go over some virtual house rules. Everyone, if you can please mute your microphone unless you are expected to speak or have been asked to speak. We definitely encourage the use of the chat feature to introduce yourself, where you're calling in from. It's really useful to have your county and city name, so we know where everyone is, based out of, what part of the food industry you are linked with. And feel free to share any contact info as well, especially if you want to connect with people on this call and start that networking process. We definitely welcome your participation and use of emojis or reactions, and video cameras we definitely encourage to be on, but can be off during the training. However, we hope that you can humanize your presence during the question and answer session at the very end. And today we have the honor of hearing from Jennifer Hagen, our distinguished guest speaker. Before we begin her training session, I'd like to provide a brief overview of her impressive background. Jennifer works with IFAS as an extension agent, specializing in food systems, regulation, and entrepreneurship. She is committed to helping small farmers and food-related entrepreneurs launch and grow their businesses effectively. Raised in Southwest Florida and currently based in Lee County, Jennifer works across the state to promote Florida agriculture and support value-added practices. During today's session, you'll gain valuable insights into Florida's cottage food exemption and the recent legislative amendments that expand opportunities for home-based entrepreneurs. We'll cover the regulations governing cottage food production and the types of products that can be sold from your home without needing permits. Whether you're considering starting a cottage food business or seeking clarity on Florida's requirements, this session is really designed to guide you. We invite everyone again to actively participate in the chat. Feel free to submit your questions as they come, and we will address them as appropriate and during the Q&A. So without further ado, let's hear from our expert. Please join me in welcoming Jen Hagen.
Good morning, well, afternoon, I guess, 7 minutes into our afternoon. Hi, friends. Jen Hagen. I'm based in Lee County, Florida, but I do work statewide because cottage food applies to the entire state of Florida, right? So thank you for putting in your locations and your names into the chat box. That's very helpful for me. I did see someone joining us from Oregon. I'm super excited about that. However, everything I'm going to tell you may not apply to you in Oregon, but if you're going to be selling here in Florida, or if you're looking for more information in Oregon, I can definitely connect you to the right folks. So without further ado, let's see if I can have technology work for me today. And Lana, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing. So I'm going to kick you out. 1 second.
Please do.
All right. And we're going to start from the beginning here. My presentation. Can you all see it? Yay. All right, Kathy, you're giving me a weird face. Okay. I'm trying to monitor two screens.
Yeah, no, I was just reading that someone's joining from Ecuador, and that was like, oh, but they're based out of Miami, so that was
Okay, that makes
my
sense.
big
Well,
my big old smile.
this is very exciting. And folks, I can't see the chat box right now since I am sharing my screen, but Alana and Kathy are definitely going to help me out with it. But we're going to go over the basics of cottage food, but I just want to let you know, please use the chat box to share any questions you may have, but I am going to go ahead and let me get through a few slides first, because I think that potentially the question you may have, I may answer if we can get through about 4 to 5 slides. I really want this to be an engaging conversation as much as we can do virtually. So let me go ahead and set the stage. So as Lana mentioned, Jenna Hagen, I've been working in the cottage food space for almost 10 years, which is insane, but it's true. I am based in Lee County, so I work specifically out of Lee County, out of the Southwest District. When I say Southwest, South Florida, Lee County, Charlotte, Port Charlotte, Collier, those areas. But I do work across the state of Florida consulting folks, especially with exposure like we're receiving today with FOG or any of our small farmers training that we do through the University of Florida. So today specifically, we are going to be covering the Home Sweet Home Act, which became adopted. And in layman's terms, it just means that in July 1st of 2021, legislative conditions were right that they adopted the Home Sweet Home Act. And so everything I'm going to be going over with you today is cottage food today as it was amended July 1st, 2021. And again, my information's on the first slide. This next slide is just our slide that we use for Justice for All. It means for the University of Florida, we serve all, we work with all, and in according to civil rights regulations and policies, we are here for everyone and do not discriminate in any way. So that is my plug for my employment. Moving on to why we're here today. So you'll notice throughout the slideshow that there may be some strike through and underline addition to the verbiage on the slide that you're looking at. What I want you to note is that if something is underlined, which you'll see in the next, well, actually you can see it on this slide, it means that term or that number changed in 2021. So it's the most recent amendment to cottage food. But the one thing I like to do to set the stage is to, maybe you are not aware of this, but to educate you on the fact that cottage food, while most of us refer to it in Florida as a law, the law actually is exempting cottage food from commercial food safety regulations in Florida. So while we do refer to it as a cottage food law, it's actually exempt from state statutes. So that means that there are certain requirements and parameters that you must work and play within that space in order to be a cottage food operator in Florida. And I'm going to introduce those to you today. But first and foremost is that the cottage food exemption is outlined in the Florida state statutes. It's under section 512. And if you have problems sleeping at night, I definitely recommend pulling it up. It will probably make your eyes glass over easily. But I'm going to help you with some tips and tricks on the cottage food. So the skinny on it is that cottage food in Florida does not require any license or permit from the Florida Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services. So that means you are not inspected, you are not regulated, you are not required to register as a cottage food operator in Florida. However, you are only allowed to produce and process certain types of foods as a cottage food operator. We're going to dive into that a little bit in a few slides, but a food safety term that's commonly used when we're discussing what's allowable and what's prohibited in cottage food is called TCS. And TCS stands for, as it's put out on your slide on the right-hand side, it stands for time, temperature for safety. So these are things, food products, that do not require any kind of baking. They do not require any kind of refrigeration or freezing to maintain their safety. They are considered shelf stable. So it's a product that you could buy from a big box bakery, take home, put on your counter, and consume within a few days, and there will be no issue with it in regards to the safety of that food product. The cottage food exemption does allow for up to $250,000 worth of sales out of your home. So that's no pocket change. That's a pretty exciting amount. So we're going to go over some of the specifics with cottage food starting now. So let me introduce you to what a cottage food operator is, okay? So again, this is one of those slides where you see some terms underlined, and that verbiage changed as of July 2021. But basically, the definition is the same. A cottage food operation or a cottage food operator is a person or entity who produces or packages cottage food products at the residence of the natural person who has ownership in the entity and sells such products under Florida statute. So that's a really long definition for someone that produces cottage food in their home, in their primary kitchen for sale, okay? The entity question or the entity piece refers to the fact that instead of saying Jen's sweet cakes, I may come up with a new term just called Sweet Cakes LLC, right? So the entity is more of the business name, but it still refers to the individual producing or processing that food in their home kitchen. So I'm going to drive this home a little further. Not that your kitchen has to look as specifically as this slide illustrates, but I really want you to understand that this allows you to produce limited food products from your primary home kitchen. So it does not matter if you rent, it does not matter if you own, wherever you live in the state of Florida, that is your primary residence, is a permissible home kitchen in order for you to produce cottage food products out of, okay? So it's just intended to be your single family residential kitchen as the source of your food, cottage food operation. So that is allowable. I'm going to also introduce you to a very hard slide to see, but I swear you can find this information online. But I want to basically go through some of the foods that are allowed under cottage food and some of them are prohibited. And the reason comes down to this. It really is a food safety issue, okay? And we're not going to go into all the details of food science right now, but what I want you to understand that the reason you can produce these limited products is because they do not require, again, that TCS, that time temperature control for safety. They are shelf stable and they have what is considered a low probability of something happening to that food that could make us sick, okay? I want to briefly outline some of the cottage food products that you can produce. And as you start to look at the left-hand side of your screen, and again, I took this slide verbatim from FDAC's guidance document on cottage food. It's not something that I created, it's something that I borrow in order to show you kind of the comparison of what's allowed and what's not allowed. But as we go through the list, you can see, pardon me, that you can produce certain things like breads, rolls, biscuits, cakes, pastries, certain candies and confections, Honey is also a cottage food, so that allows some conversation to come in with some of our Florida keepers that are hobbyists, and I work very closely with that demographic. You're also allowed to make jams and jellies from high acid fruits only, and we can get into that a little bit in the Q&A. Fruit pies, dried fruits, dried herbs, seasoning and mixtures, homemade dry pasta, cereal, trail mixes, granola. Again, all these are dried products, coated or uncoated nuts, vinegar or flavored vinegars, popcorn, and some nut butters. So as you can see, most of those items, though they may be limited in your purview, they are limited because they have a very low moisture content, and they do not have things that would make them susceptible to spoilage or food safety concerns. Okay. So I'm not trying to kill your dreams here. I'm trying to educate you on what is allowed under cottage food. So here's where I spill the beans or the tea. I guess we'll say the tea because that's a dried product and can be used as cottage food. Okay, fun fact there. But anyway, what foods are prohibited? Basically everything else. And the reason these foods are prohibited is because these foods require food safety training, a certain food regulated kitchen, and they require you to be permitted through a food permit in order to process, because they can be susceptible or they have more availability in regards to whether it be their moisture content or some additional processing that has to happen in order for them to be safe. So these types of foods that you may be unfortunately unhappy to hear me say, but your salsas, your barbecues, your ketchups, your mustards, your canned fruits and vegetables, your hummus, your garlic dips, any kind of fish, shellfish products are prohibited, any of your pickles, relishes, or sauerkraut, raw seed sprouts are prohibited. Any kind of bakery item that has a type of dairy product within it. So while you may have a pound cake that would be allowable under cottage food, cheesecakes are not. And I use this example because a cheesecake requires refrigeration. It has a high moisture content, and it also has a high percentage of dairy used within that product. So that would not be allowable under cottage food. However, a pound cake would. Anything also that would be more dairy focused or centric, like your yogurts, your cottage cheeses. Another thing people get confused about is fresh fruits and vegetables. Those are permitted under a different process. They are not allowable under cottage food. Now, I'm not saying you cannot use those certain ingredients within your product, but we're going to sit tight on that and we're going to get back to that and dive into that a little bit more. Ice products are prohibited, any kind of meat, including jerky, even though it may be a dried product. That requires an additional variance and additional food safety training and regulations in order to make that product. Also, here's another one that's kind of on the fence. It is prohibited, but it is a focaccia style bread, right? A bread would be no problem. Bread is fine. That is allowable. But the minute you put a cheese or some type of vegetable on it, that would then make it prohibited because that requires additional refrigeration or additional handling that you may not be aware of at this point. So another thing that we get a lot of questions about are the icings on cupcakes or cakes. So if you have a cake that has a dairy-based cream cheese icing, that would not be permissible underneath cottage food because, again, it's that dairy, it's that need for refrigeration, it's apt to be spoil and things of that nature. So we want to be very careful
Jen, it sounds like your sound just went out.
Those in a few, but I want to go over a couple of the things that I want you to be aware of. And can you guys just give me a yes or a thumbs up if you can hear me? I just got a message that my internet was unstable. Are we doing okay, Kathy?
Yep, yep, we hear you now
Perfect.
again.
Okay, awesome. Thank
Quick
you.
second.
Good. Okay. All right, I'm going to move forward. So, as a food handler, whether this be cottage food or if you become a food processor through a inspected and regulated process at one day in the near future, or if you want to open up your own retail shop or wholesale manufacturing processor, I want you to be aware of some of the biggest food safety concerns. And those are actually undeclared allergens. Now we have fun trivia facts for you. In January, we brought on another food item that now makes it the big 9 major food allergens. Before all of this, sesame was not on the top 8. Sesame seeds are now part of the top 9 major food allergens. So we need you to be aware of these things. And again, because when it comes to food safety, undeclared allergens in our food is one of those things that could make or break someone's day. Lots of folks are very susceptible to certain food allergens, and they need to be aware, and they need to have products that you may be making in your home clearly labeled. And so this is why I'm kind of setting the foundation for you to understand why some of the regulations for the labels are in place for cottage food. They have to do with these 9 food products, okay? And these, again, are the top 9 food products that people are susceptible to or allergic to. And they include sesame, dairy, fish, egg products, tree nuts, ground nuts, shellfish, wheat, right? Wheat is that gluten, that's the protein within a wheat that a lot of people are susceptible to. And soy is another one of the major food allergens. So again, when we get a little closer to looking and identifying the required labeling of cottage food, we want you to understand why this is important, because if you do not declare that one of these items are within your recipe or your ingredients of your finished product, it could make someone very sick, and it also is a huge risk and liability for you as the cottage food operator. And I just want to say that again, we are trying to educate you and make you successful to have all the things that you need to know in place and the reasoning behind them. So while you may think that putting all of your ingredients on a label tag is going to reveal your secret recipe, that is not the case. Unfortunately, as much as you love that recipe, the state could care less about the recipe. They just want to make sure that you are identifying these 9 allergens within that product. Okay, I just want to kind of drive that home. So let's take a look at the label I'm talking about. So again, cottage food is an exemption. You are allowed to produce a certain limited amount of food products with the understanding that you will play within this space. And here is the required piece of this. You have to, there's no negotiation about this. You have to label your product with the correct requirements. And the picture on the right-hand side, again, is a label that I have borrowed from FDAX with an example label for you. And I want to go over some of the important pieces to that label. First and foremost, again, you are operating outside of any inspection, outside of any regulation or food safety handling. So that means that you need to clearly label your product with the statement that says this product has been made in a cottage food operation that is not subject to Florida food safety requirements. That is your statement that says basically, I am producing this food in my own kitchen at my own free will. Okay. The next thing is that I'm going to go ahead and hold on. I'm going to turn off my video for just a second to make sure my internet stays stable. I don't know why I'm experiencing this, but okay, let's see if this is better. So with the requirement of that statement needs to be a 10-point type font. That font has to be clearly being able to read and eligible, I'm sorry, I can't talk, legible, excuse me, on your label. It needs to note also under that required statement the type of product that is. For this demonstration, we're going to call it a chocolate chip cookie, and you are going to clearly label that it's a chocolate chip cookie. The third piece of this required label that you need to be aware of, and again, this is one of those non-negotiable things, is you have to put your personal name or your business name that you are operating under and your primary home address. This, again, you cannot not list this because this comes down to the traceability. If there is some kind of issue, which we hope there will not be after this, this walkthrough, you guys are going to be all educated, know all the things. But if there is some kind of issue, the consumer ultimately needs to know how to trace back to get to you because of that product that they may have had some reaction, or maybe hopefully they just want to buy more, right? But the name and the address of the cottage food operation has to be listed. The next thing is that list of ingredients. Again, it's not to reveal your special secret recipe. It's just to clearly state what is within that chocolate chip cookie. So everyone who is potentially considering purchasing it knows that there may be soy in this cookie. There may be dairy. There may be wheat, right? That's the main ingredient is wheat flour. So that clearly needs to be stated. So you are declaring any potential allergens. Okay. So that is required. No ifs or buts about it. Your address, your name, all the ingredients. And then what you are also saying is that it can contain wheat, eggs, milk, soy, walnuts. That is the declaration of allergens. And last but not least is the net weight of that product. Okay, so those are some specific things. I'm going to move forward with a few more slides and we're going to come back and dive into this with some of your questions. Okay. But again, I'm sorry if you have a partner or somebody in your household that works for law enforcement or maybe a doctor or an attorney. If you want to play in the cottage food space, you have to declare your home address. So that is something that you need to be aware of. Okay. Next is, as required by the exemption, if you are going to be providing any samples of your product, those samples need to be pre-packaged at your home. Again, this would only be as if you're selling at a pop-up market or a farmer's market. Those samples should be pre-packaged so they can be handed off to your consumer for them to be able to enjoy in a safe, pre-packaged way. Now, I know this might be difficult. We can address some questions for you about this, but really this is just another way to safeguard you as a business entity to make sure that your food is, or the samples of your food is given to your consumers in a safe way. Okay, next, let's get into some more of the rules. Before you sell, I want you to know that the regulation of the cottage food operations is overruled by the state. The state are the regulators of this exemption. That is underlined because that changed in 2021, that prior to 2021, if a local municipality or county did not want you to participate or to be a cottage food operator, they could prohibit you from operating in the locality. As of in 2021, you are no longer under the local ruling, so the state regulates this. So you cannot be refused as a cottage operator in your community. Next, I want you to also be aware that if you are selling a cottage food product, you also are required to apply for a local business tax account application. Now, you may say, why? Food, for the most part, is not taxed. That may be true, but if you did not know, chocolate is taxed, where crackers are not. It's a very bizarre thing. And if, again, you have trouble sleeping at night, there's an IRS document that tells you everything as far as food related products that are taxed or not taxed. Save yourself the hassle. Go ahead and apply for the business tax account application. Your local tax collector will guide you through that process. And at the end of the year, you may declare absolutely zero sales. However, you are still required to have a business tax account application because you are selling a product within Florida. Next, but not least, where can you sell these products, right? So where can you not? Okay, I'm going to tell you where you cannot. The reason you cannot sell your cottage food products over a counter of any of these entities is because these entities, your restaurants, your grocery stores, your food trucks, your antique or your consignment shops, your local barber shop, your local insurance office, listen, you cannot sell at any of these locations because they are regulated in a different space, okay? They are inspected and permitted under a different retail or wholesale manufacturing food permit, and you as a cottage food operator are not. Therefore, you cannot sell over their counter or they cannot sell your products. Where can you sell? This is your bread and butter, pun intended, okay? As a cottage food operator, you can sell out of your home, you can sell or advertise to sell and ship over the internet, and you can mail your products interstate. So that means prior to 2021, you could only mail your products. I'm sorry, you could not even mail, but you could only sell to Florida consumers. Now you can sell beyond Florida and mail those products. You can also sell at farmers and pop-up markets, special events like a wedding, or at a flea market or a roadside stand, if that is permissible and you follow the local zoning laws for that particular market. Here again is my slide that says one more time that you sell, offer to sell, or can accept payment over the internet or by mail order. And you can deliver those products directly to the consumer through your commercial mailing opportunities, your domestic United States Postal. You can advertise through Etsy, TikTok, Facebook, all the socials. So that is no longer an issue with the 2021 regulations. You also at some of the markets, and Fogg can probably answer this a little better since they work in the space with farmers markets, but SNAP recipients can also purchase your cottage foods at a farmer's markets with EBT cards, which is an excellent opportunity. So check with your local market manager to figure out if they're offering this program. And if you're interested in participating in this, we can definitely give you more information in regards to SNAP. Okay, I just gave you a lot, but I want to leave information for conversation. I am going to throw this guidance document that I have co-authored about cottage food into the chat, unless Lana, you've already done it, but we'll circle back to that. That is just another way for you to have a visual guide as you're looking at exploring cottage food. And if it's something you want to entertain, my contact information is pretty simple, jhagen with an E at ufl.edu. You can search and Google me. I'm pretty easy to find. Fortunately, sometimes I wish I was not, but you can find me. I'm here to help you. And I am going to stop sharing so we can get into some of the conversations in regards to what we want to know and discuss. Okay. I'm going to see if I can turn my video back on, if there's any issues. Lana or Kathy, I know you've been monitoring the chat
Yeah.
box. I'm sure it's exploded. If one of you want to help me walk through this, I'm very excited
Yep,
because this is
absolutely.
where, right? This is where you start to learn and understand more of it besides the general introduction I just gave you.
Perfect. Yes. So one of the first questions there are animal treats also not covered by cottage law, such as dog treats, cat treats, even when made with human food?
Oh, this is a good one. I don't know who asked it, but so look in my eyes. Pet food is not a cottage food product. Now, there are cottage food operators that use the caveat that it's human food you can share with your pet. However, pet food is regulated under a different process. So I want you to understand the rules, and it clearly states that pet food is not a cottage food. Sorry. But I can help you get to producing, pet food if you want to through a different way.
Perfect. Are infused oils prohibited?
Okay, so if you're looking at infusing an oil, and maybe you could give me an example, but let's say you wanted to have a lavender syrup, okay? Syrups are not necessarily allowed, tinctures are. There's an issue though, if the tincture has a carrier oil that has some kind of alcohol base, that just like kombucha and other things needs to be identified. So that has to go through another process of looking into alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I know that's an outdated term, but it's alcohol, beverages, and tobacco, I think is the name of the term of the division. They regulate the alcohol content in it. So that's another thing you just need to be aware of. You cannot infuse something like olive oil with garlic cloves. Garlic cloves have a huge moisture content, though they can potentially harbor pathogens that could contaminate your oil. So we need to be very specific with understanding what you're asking, what you want to infuse it with, and FDAX can help you break that down. They are there as your educator to walk you through that process. What's next?
All right. Question number 3 is the address requires a street or can it be a post office box?
No PO boxes. It has to be your home address. I'm sorry, but that's one of the rules to play.
Awesome. All right. Question number 4. What about if you grow your own fruit? The byproducts are exempt through the LBT office here in Miami-Dade.
Okay, so here's the thing. It depends and it's very specific. If you grow your own fruit and then you are going to use that fruit as an ingredient that will be baked, as far as like a pie or a pound cake, that can be permissible, but it really gets down to the specific thing you want to bake and what item you are going to put within that baked product. This question we get a lot when it comes to tea, right? Tea or different herbs. You can grow those things at home or on your farm if you are registered as a nursery through the state. The minute you dry that, it now becomes a cottage food product. So I'm not trying to confuse you, but think of, yes, you can grow certain things, but for cottage food, those products like tea, for instance, or herbs would have to be dried in order for you to either sell them or incorporate them into your final product.
Perfect.
There's a follow-up to that question,
Yes.
Kathy.
Oh,
Jorge asked, not baked would be fruit preserved from the harvested fruit in Miami-Dade.
So that's a really good question. This gets tricky based on some of the fruit. What they are looking at is basically the acid level in that preserved product. So if you have a high acid fruit, that would be permissible. If it's a low acid, it's not. I have another document I can grab and throw into this so you can kind of learn a little bit more about the pH and how it plays into it. And I know it gets really, and I hate to say it, gets very specific based on what you're looking to do and the ingredients. And if I can't answer it confidently, please email me. I have a very strong relationship with FDAX, and we go over this between each other continuously about what product's okay, what's not, what you would have to do. Because again, the whole goal is not to regulate you, it's to protect you from any kind of risk. Because as a cottage food operator, it's you operating out of your home. Okay. So I just want you to understand the risks associated with that. But if you are going to do, I think what was the question now that I can see it here, was it cranberry hibiscus? I think we were looking at potentially. Some syrups are, so this is another thing that goes back and forth. In the past, everybody was very interested in selling elderberry syrup. Prior to 2021, syrups were not allowed. Then FDAX said elderberry syrup is allowed. So again, we want to be very specific with what your ingredients are, what your final product would be, and FDAX will give you a yes or no on that if you have any questions. Next question.
So the next question is, do you have a link to the regulations for Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico doesn't like to make information easy to be found.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I do not, but I am part of a network of folks that may. So if you want to shoot me an email or put your name or email in the chat box, I can definitely see if I can source that for you.
Perfect. How about dried roselle hibiscus in a syrup? Would that be allowed?
So here's what I always recommend people, and Lana and I have talked about this before. So you have your dried roselle, right? The dried product is fine. What I would encourage you to do in a cottage food space is sell the dried product or whatever you would put into that syrup or that tea in its dried form, and then give instructions on how to liquefy it. Does that make sense? Because the minute you liquefy it, that's where it's starting to cut into some of the food safety requirements that you need to be aware of, because now you have just created a moisture content that could potentially run into some problems. So I always tell cottage food operators, start with a dry base, put a recipe of how you would liquefy it at home, and start from there.
Thank you. All right. Another question is sourdough loaf with cheese and or peppers prohibited? Bagels with cheese?
Both of them are prohibited, unfortunately. It's the cheese and the fresh veggie that you're putting into it. Your fancy focaccias, and trust me, these are not my rules. I would eat the heck out of that right now. But for your safety, those are regulated under a food permit through FDAX.
Correct. Another question is, can you buy organic products grown and made by other people's suppliers and incorporate them into creating your own product? Example is organic flour, sugars, grains, fruits, veggies, nuts, etc.
Okay, yes and no. And here's why I say yes and no, and it depends, right? You can definitely buy and source your ingredients if those ingredients are going to be compiled into a batter or something that you will be finishing off by baking it or drying it. Does that make sense? Like you are taking the food safety issues out of it by either baking or dehydrating those things. Flour can still harbor pathogens. So flour is one of those things that is not allowed on cottage food because you can still have salmonella or different things of that nature that could be found within that flour. So you have to be careful with the flour. I would say no go on that, but your dried nuts, your coated nuts are permissible.
Perfect. Are local businesses tax account the same as a business tax receipt?
Yes, and there's different terms for it, right? Some of us might even call it a home occupation license. So it's going to be the same license that you apply for through your local tax collector for a home occupation. So whether you're doing the books for your friend or your partner's lawn care service or your cottage food operator, it's the same form. And if you have any questions or have any very detailed tax questions, definitely reach out to your tax collectors. They'll be able to help you with it. Be patient if the person that answered the phone does not understand cottage food operations. Often they may not, but somebody higher up in the food chain can and will work with you in your local municipality.
Perfect. So great questions, everyone.
Yes.
Where can they find particular rules on the syrups like elderberry and roselle?
Okay. Email me and I will loop you in with FDAX. Okay. Because again, it's going to be very product specific. And they do a lot of testing through FDAX with their food science folks to make sure the safety of that product. So again, let's just go to the horse's mouth and run it through FDAX for your safety and liability.
Perfect.
Or you don't have to email me, right? Like I'm just the middle person. Like if you want, please reach out specifically to FDEX. They are there to educate you and make you successful and make you aware of the different food permits and exemptions that are out there. So definitely go to them. I just help them field some of the questions so I can help you with other things if you have other questions in regards to food related entrepreneurship, right?
Jen, will you explain what FDAX is for those on the call that do not know?
Of course. I'm so
FDAX.
sorry.
That's okay.
I may have on one of my slides
Nope.
explained what that was, but that's a term I throw around all the time. It stands for the Florida Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services. I want you to say it 3 times quick. I'm just joking. But who FTAX is they are the regulators, the overseers, if you will, for cottage food in Florida. They are the ones that decide and know all the different things in regards to the 2 federal food codes and how we apply them with retail and wholesale processing in Florida. So you're either exempt through cottage food or you have to be regulated and inspected through retail or wholesale manufacturing food permit.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Another question is, do you have samples of the label or any type of label that can be shared?
So what we're going to throw, it maybe in there already, is an EDIS. EDIS stands for Electronic Database Information System. It's a UF catalog of all the different documents that we write. Let's see if I can put it in there real quick. Yes, I'm going to throw it in. So that document goes over pretty much everything I've outlaid for you today, and then also shows you the specific requirements as far as that 10 font, that example of the statement that you have to list, and also my contact information. So you can definitely jump in there and peruse.
Perfect. Flour on baked loaf of bread, is that?
Where's the flour coming from?
Good question.
So that again, remember, like if you are buying flour that are you looking just to dust it like you would like flour as a dusting or a sugar or something like that? Commercial flour, yes, because here's the thing. The cottage food is for you to be able to go buy your ingredients at a big box regulated store. Those products have met all the requirements for food safety for their specific ingredient. So you would be able to dust that flour that has gone through all those regulations for you as the third party to buy, to dust on your product. Yes, there would be no problem with that. Not to confuse you with the flour we were talking about before. If you're making and grinding and processing your own flour at home, remember, flour can be one of those ingredients that can, again, carry something like salmonella. So we want to make sure we are reducing any liability and risk to you as the cottage food operator.
Perfect. Let's see. This person said that they operate an aquaponics farm. Are you able to sell salad mixes under the cottage law?
No, unfortunately not. But you can through a different department with the Department of Agriculture.
Does the cottage food product have to be certified organic in order to label it and sell it as an organic product?
Stay away from all labeling. Okay. Labeling sometimes raises red flags because they mean that you've been third party validated or different things of that nature. If you're using organic products as your ingredients list, then you can say it's made mostly of organic materials. But again, labeling gets you into some sticky things that I would encourage you to stay away from. You can definitely verbalize and educate your consumers about the products and where you source your products, but labeling is one of those things that just stay clear from at this point.
Perfect. I guess the follow-up for the bread flour was, if flour is permitted, which ingredients do cottage food operators usually use for baking items like bread?
Not sure I understand the question, but if you're buying your flour and all your ingredients, so let me help you understand this a little bit. If you are buying butter as an ingredient that will be put within your cake or your cookies and then you bake it, that is fine because the food safety hazards have been eliminated by you baking that product, okay? So if you were to take that same bread and put a dairy cream icing on it, that is the problem. So it just depends on what ingredients you're putting into your product, how you are either baking or processing that, and just use the rule of thumb that you're not going to use any raw, fresh fruits or vegetables or dairy as part of your final product, but it can be an ingredient within your recipe that you process either by baking or dehydrating of some sort of that nature. Does that make sense? I know it's clear as mud.
Let me see if there's any more new questions. We have about 5 minutes left. I know that several people are asking where can they get this presentation and whatnot. I will go ahead and speak. I've put that chat right, that link in the chat. So it will be posted to our high-low platform. If you are not already registered on our platform, that link is there for you to do so.
And another thing, friends, if you want to, if you have a specific question, if you want to email it to me, I'm happy. I mean, that's my job, right? We do consult with you individually to help you be educated on all of the things cottage food. And if there's something that you really, really want to do that is not allowed under cottage food, we will help you understand the process to scale up because that's what Kathy and Lana and I are here to do, is to offer your opportunities of what you can and cannot do and then help you do it in a safe way that makes sense for you as a cottage food operator, or maybe one day as a food permit holder. Who knows, right?
I'd also like to reiterate that we actually just had a recent podcast with the beautiful Jennifer on this very topic. So you are able to find it and listen. And we've got the link in there, but it is our Fresh Take podcast.
Perfect.
And it's available on Spotify, Apple Music, etc.
All the places, right?
All the places.
We have some folks that may want to unmute themselves to ask a question or gain further clarity on something. So Marnie, I invite you to unmute yourself if you want to get some, more information from Jen on something that you were confused about. Or anyone else that, okay, I see Marnie, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, Jen. Thank you. Your presentations are always so fantastic, you guys.
Thank you.
Is much appreciated. Thank you so much. I can tell you've put an enormous amount of preparation into this. The presentation went by like lightning. Okay, so it way too fast because I capture all these things and document them, and you went way too fast.
I know, I know. That's why we provide all of this to you as
Yeah.
follow-up too. So
No,
yeah,
that's good. Okay, so back to the question, because that last explanation you gave, Jen, confused the living daylights out of me.
sure.
Let's go back to Roselle as an example for a minute. It's raised, it's actually organic, it's cool. The big market is for the syrup. I've made hibiscus tea for a long time, but the syrup is what is really important because of the its help in lowering high blood pressure and clearing the gut. So let's just go to the statement you made about, okay, so we've got this fresh fruit or whatever, and it's okay, but we put it into something baked and then it's not okay, or is it okay? What were you saying there?
Reverse that. So if you have a product that, well, for instance, like the Roselle, if you're going to dehydrate it and make it dry like you would for a tea, that would be fine. But cottage food requires you to sell it in its dried state. They've gone back and forth on whether they allow syrups or not. And the answer I often get is it depends. So Marnie, I would love to ask that question specifically with you to FDAX so we have a clear statement from them.
Good. Okay. Thank
Does
you.
that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot because I do both, and the
Yeah.
market for that is burgeoning, and I was thinking I would start launching at the farmers markets and stuff. The Roselle syrup and is the new thing that
Elderberry.
you have to
Yeah.
scale up for. Well, I've got a serious Roselle crop, and I've realized that I'm not the only one. There are
Sure.
other organic farmers out here who are doing the same thing
Yes.
because it's a newly discovered for drinks, for
Sure.
to replace the death trap of Pepsi, Coke, and the rest of them. So let's do that. I've got
Yeah,
your
let's talk
contact information
offline,
on the
but just so
Thank
there's no
you very much.
confusion with anybody else, you can definitely sell the dried products and then instruct your consumer how to liquefy that to make a syrup at home or make a beverage at home. That would be completely permissible with cottage food. But as we start to get into the very specifics of the syrups and the tinctures, those are things I want you to be educated and understand and have a
Very
direct
good.
line with
Yeah, me too.
FDAX.
Thank you. One other question before you leave that. I do organic fruits, pears for a particular specific example, hard pears, Florida hard pears. And I make a jam out of them, and then I dehydrate that into what we call pear chews, which are very, very popular.
Yeah.
They're very chewy. They're very good. And I didn't hear that one go by in your explanation of what's
Okay, so
allowable and what's not.
yeah, so sit tight on that too, because the jury's still out with FDAX. They allow you to do certain freeze-dried, I'm sorry, they do not allow certain freeze-dried, but they're looking into the potential of doing that with fruit, not vegetables. Again, it goes through their vetting food science division. So we can circle back to
In
that.
touch.
Dehydrate's
Thank
okay,
you.
but when you're looking at freeze-dried, it's questionable because it may not actually be the product. It may be the packaging that you use that ends up harboring the pathogen. So I don't want to go way into food science here, but
Right.
you understand where I'm getting. So
I
let's
do.
talk.
Thank you for the contact.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right, it is 1 o'clock right now. I'll take Anna's question. She's next. Anna?
Hey, thank you guys. Jen,
Anna.
it's a little how are you doing? It was a great presentation. I unfortunately wasn't able to join from the beginning, but I saw a question about salad mix or something like that, hydroponic, aquaponic production. I think and I don't know, maybe I misunderstood, but I think if you're a grower, you are able to sell your own product on a farmer's market. But when the cottage law is kind of in the mix, I don't know, because I mean, the lettuce or any microgreens are fresh produce, and then you just package it and sell it without washing it, without any processing, you are fine. But it's not really under the cottage law. I'm
Correct.
right?
You are absolutely 100% correct. And what Anna's saying is that if you have salad mix or any kind of agricultural leafy item, that is sold under a different process. It is not a cottage food product. So you're absolutely correct, Anna.
Just I wanted to make sure because you know,
Yeah.
I almost misunderstood the question.
No, you and I can have that. We can discuss that.
Oh, I know.
offline.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the question. Great question.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. This has been the completion of our 1-hour virtual training with the wonderful Jennifer Hagen. Thank you so very much for all of your information and valuable support that you offer to the community and beyond. Again, I would like to reiterate that you can listen to the latest podcast episode on our Fresh Take, as well as make sure that you're on our Hilo platform. That is our networking platform for you all to connect. Will you be able to have this recording available to you to refer back to? If you have any other further questions, please do reach out to us. And we look forward to connecting with you, and thank you all for your attendance and everything that you do.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Vog, for putting this on and inviting me. Much appreciated. Enjoy our partnership.
Thank you so much, Jen. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we
Thank you so
will.
much.
Thank you. We will
Thank
email
you.
everyone the recording and the slides as well. So be on the lookout for that.
Thanks, ladies. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Much appreciated.
Thanks so much,
Beautiful.
Jen.
Thank you
Have a
so
great
much,
day.
Jen.
Bye.